Fridays are awesome. I'm Carl Azus with CNN Student News, and we're jumping right into our current events coverage with a report involving the European Union. It's an organization of 28 countries. It's holding a meeting in Brussels, Belgium this week. And one of the major topics on its agenda is Europe's ongoing migrant and refugee crisis. There are more people streaming into Europe now than at any point since the Second World War. And there are a lot of disagreements among EU members and their citizens about how to address the situation. Another topic involves whether Britain will ultimately remain part of the European Union. Because this is an economic cooperation, the stakes are high.
What is the EU? The European Union is a group of countries that work together to create a single market. This allows goods, capital, services and people to move between the member states, as long as they follow the rules and they pay the entry fee. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To start this story, we need to go right back to the end of World War II. After 6 years of fighting, Europe was decimated. Economies were collapsing and mistrust was rife as old enemies faced the prospect of recreating trade ties. France and previous occupiers Germany faced the difficult task of creating a unity for profit. So they started talking, mainly about steel and coal. In 1951, a total of 6 countries, France, Belgium, West Germany, Italy, Luxembourg and the Netherlands, reached their first accord by uniting the steel and coal industries, creating the European Coal and Steel Community, or the ECSC. They later introduced the European Economic Community, the EEC, in 1958. These two organisations are seen as the origin of the modern European Union that wouldn't adopt its new name until 1993. More than 6 decades later, the European Union now represents more than 500 million people across 28 countries and with a common currency, the euro, which generates an estimated 14 trillion euros in GDP per year. The premise: countries who are economically linked are less likely to have conflicts. But it isn't a totally happy marriage for many countries, as some are affected differently by world events. There have been arguments over financial regulations, bailouts and different approaches to migration. This has given rise to anti-EU parties across Europe, with many calling for their countries to withdraw from arguably the world's most powerful union.
The U.S. Supreme Court canceled the regular conference it had scheduled for today. It's a time of mourning following the sudden death of 79-year-old Justice Antonin Scalia. Government officials say he passed away in his sleep last weekend. Justice Scalia's body is lying in repose at the court. And many people are wondering what happens to Supreme Court cases with an even number of justices on the bench. What if a decision is split 4-4? The answer is that the lower court's ruling would stand. Those particular cases would not be overturned. But if multiple courts ruled differently on a case, a 4-4 decision at the Supreme Court wouldn't really decide anything. The justices do have the option to hold over cases, though. They could put off ruling on them until a 9th justice is confirmed. You've heard of reindeer in the Arctic, or maybe pulling a sleigh, but you probably wouldn't expect to find one underwater. Well, one was, during World War II in a submarine. Her name was Pollyanna, and she was a gift from a Russian submarine crew to a British one. Pollyanna spent 6 weeks aboard the HMS Trident before eventually being transferred to a zoo when she was back on dry land. Now that's random! All right, before one Democrat and one Republican appear on the U.S. presidential ballot this November, the parties have to decide whom to nominate. Part of that process is playing out in all 50 states, but unlike the contests in Iowa and New Hampshire, where Democrat and Republican candidates were voted for on the same day, the next 2 states hold their votes for Democrats and Republicans on different days. This Saturday, South Carolina will be focused on Republican candidates. Former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore recently suspended his campaign, so 6 GOP candidates are still in. Jonathan Mann takes us to the Palmetto State.
South Carolina hosts the first in the South primary, with Republicans voting February 20th, Democrats a week later. Known for its beaches and barbecue, the Palmetto State is a Republican stronghold. Almost 3/4 of voters describe themselves as somewhat or very conservative in the state's last GOP primary. Nearly as many, 65%, said they were born again or evangelical Christians, and about a quarter said they were active or former military. South Carolina is more diverse than Iowa and New Hampshire, with a sizable African American community, the vast majority of them Democrats. You may recall South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, a rising star in the Republican Party, made headlines last summer when she ordered the removal of the Confederate flag from the State House in Columbia.
It's time to move the flag from the Capitol grounds.
South Carolina is also known for some political dirty tricks in its past primaries, but the state also has a history of picking a winner. In 5 of the last 6 elections, the winner of the South Carolina primary went on to win the GOP nomination. And the last 3 presidents, Obama, Bush, and Clinton, all lost in New Hampshire, but won in South Carolina the year they were first elected.
The battle-born state of Nevada is also holding a contest this Saturday. And like South Carolina, it splits up its votes by party. So this weekend's Nevada caucuses are focused on Democrats. There are 2 of them still in the race, and they're neck and neck in the polls.
The Nevada caucuses could turn into an old-fashioned Wild West showdown.
You look at Nevada, it's a microcosm of our country. It is what America's all about.
It's the first contest of the campaign calendar held in the western U.S. Democrats turn out February 20th, Republicans 3 days later. It's relatively new to the process. Nevada's first caucus was just in 2004, but now it's seen as a critical battleground for Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, fighting to win over an electorate more diverse than Iowa or New Hampshire, with more Hispanic and African American voters. While the state is geographically large, the race will likely be won or lost in just one city, Las Vegas. Sin City and the surrounding Clark County are home to nearly 3/4 of the state's population. Recent history suggests Nevada is Clinton country. Hillary Clinton narrowly won the vote in the 2008 caucus. Bill Clinton carried the state in both the 1992 and 96 elections, helping him win the White House both times. The Sanders campaign hopes to change that, spending millions on TV ads in both English and Spanish, and adding at least 50 staffers in 11 offices across the state. Nevada Senator Harry Reid tells CNN the race in his home state is too tight to call. Odds makers agree, giving both Clinton and Sanders a 50-50 chance of winning. We'll find out which candidate hits the Nevada jackpot on Saturday.
From the U.S. Northeast to the Middle East, it's time to travel on the CNN Student News Roll Call. From Berman Hebrew Academy, the Cougars are watching today. Good to see you in Rockville, Maryland. From Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, the Greyhounds are running with us. Shippensburg Area Middle School is on the roll. And from the capital of the United Arab Emirates, that's Abu Dhabi, hello to everyone watching at the American Community School of Abu Dhabi. When we say haunted places, you probably don't think of office buildings, but this one's gonna freak you out. Meeting's over, dude. The chairs will rearrange themselves. Oh, I see you're leaving. We'll just slip back under the table. Okay, this is not really a horror film. The Nissan Automotive Company made self-parking chairs while working on self-driving cars. Doesn't really solve a huge problem, and Nissan doesn't really plan to sell them. Good thing, it could make having a seat absolutely terrifying. An empty room, an empty space, sheer terror. How was your meeting, Bob? Absolutely terrible. But if they sell this sometime, maybe they could just take all the proceeds and donate them to charity. I'm Carl Azuz, and I'm ready to get up. We'll see you next week.